Okay, good evening. Looks like we might have a light night. Hi. Based on attendance and our agenda tonight, but we'll go ahead and get this thing started. Let's see, it's about, 6:06 PM tonight on January 28th. We'll call the meeting to order at that time. And as a reminder, I read all the announcements. But as a reminder, if you would like to speak before the commission tonight, please complete a blue speaker request form and give it to the clerk prior to the item. We'll go ahead and start roll call. Stephanie?
Commissioner Cirillo?
Here.
Commissioner Fitch?
Here.
Commissioner Varela?
Here.
Vice Chair Gracia?
Here.
Chair Dinko?
Here.
Thank you.
In the Pledge of Allegiance, could we have Commissioner Varela? Next item on the agenda is the commission reorganization. Looks like we have a new public safety commissioner. Welcome. Thank you. Good to see you here. I know I missed you last month, but welcome to the commission. Do we have any more on that item before we keep going?
I do have a bio that I would like to share. So at the December 12th, 2019 City Council meeting, Councilmember Rigby appointed Herbert Cirillo to this Public Safety Commission. Herb and his wife, Beth, have been married for 35 years and have been residents to the city of Eastville since early 2018. They have 3 adult children and 1 grandchild. After serving for over 30 years with the Los Angeles Police Department, Herb retired as Police Sergeant 2. He has accumulated several advanced supervisory level certificates through his years of employment with the City of Los Angeles. His leadership assignments oversaw a variety of specialty units, detailing including narcotics, gang enforcement, department and service training, community volunteer programs, academic supervisory, physical fitness supervisor, and academy drill instructor. Herb and Beth are actively involved with Calvary Chapel and volunteer many hours of faithful service to many outreaches. Herb continues to have a desire for public safety and looks forward to sharing his experience and contributing to serving this great citizens of Eastville.
Thank you. Welcome, Herb.
Thank you,
It was how many total? Was it 30?
Just a little over 30.
Awesome. All right, on to our next item. We have the next item, 3.2, is the Public Safety Commission reorganization. Are you going to present the item, Stephanie?
Yes. So the Public Safety Commission appoints a commissioner to serve as chair and vice chair annually. These appointments are effective immediately after the nominations are approved. The newly appointed chair and vice chair will preside through calendar year 2020. At this time, I would like to turn it over to the commission for discussion.
All right, thank you. Do we have anything from my fellow commissioners want to present?
Well, you guys only got appointed in like May, and then we had a combined meeting, then missed the meeting, so we've only seen action like 4 times. So I'm fine with renominating Rob and Christian for chair and vice chair again, if we're allowed to do consecutive appointments.
I appreciate that. I know I didn't get a full term. Certainly, I'd like to at least have one, so I appreciate that vote of confidence. I imagine you probably feel the same. Anything else?
I second that recommendation. I feel that you guys are both doing a great job.
Then I think the next item would, a formal motion. I don't know if that would count. Is that a motion?
Yeah, we could, that was a motion, so we can go ahead and do a vote on that. Commissioner Cirillo,
I agree. Yes.
Commissioner Fitch,
Aye.
Commissioner Varela,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gracia,
Aye.
Chair Dinko.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Next up for are the presentation and announcements. We have here a community emergency response team presentation. Do we still have that tonight?
We do. You had requested at a previous meeting to have a little more information on the CERT program, and we put that together for you with a short PowerPoint and a video of CERT, and also some pictures from our recent CERT training that we did here right in City Council chambers, where one of your commissioners was at the training, along with his wife, I believe. Here we are, out in front of City Hall, getting ready to put out some fires. Do we want to do the video first? Is that what that means? Okay, so let's watch the CERT in action video. We can get that going. This is a FEMA video that kind of gives you an overview of the program.
It was a warm, beautiful day. And the excitement in the air was the battle of the Bay between the two baseball teams, the Giants and the A's. My family was sitting down to dinner with the television on to watch the World Series game, and then the earthquake started. The television blacked out, there was noise everywhere. All of a sudden, the ground was shaking, the walls were shaking. It's like being on an ocean liner that's hit a huge wave or a storm at sea.
The fire in Oakland is a major fire, a large fire nearly half a block long.
The Bay Bridge has been lost.
It was the scariest thing I'd ever been through. And I think the worst thing about it was not knowing what to do after.
In 1989, when Loma Prieta earthquake hit, our department went to Los Angeles to get the CERT curriculum, the Community Emergency Response Team program. Our primary goal is to make sure that the residents that live here are ready for anything.
Mart is a small town. There's only about 2,000 people that live here. So what's unique about the CERT program here at Mart is a number of things. One, it's all teenagers. All of us are in high school. It's also taught as an actual class here. It affects our GPA. The Teen CERT program is crucial to Mart because we don't have EMS, we don't have those types of first responders. Waco would be called first, and it takes them at least 30 minutes to get here. So we really are the first line of defense.
So we are going to be looking at MIs. What are MIs? Heart attack.
As the town's needs change, our studies change. Our community needs not just the CERT curriculum, but we add to that with EMT curriculum. I don't think adults give teenagers in general enough credit for what they can and can't do. We kind of undermine what I think they're capable of. So if you teach them to rise to that expectation, they will, and they'll be able to handle it. Marlin is in Falls County, 20-30 minutes away. The water system completely failed last year. So the townspeople were without water for approximately 10 to 12 days.
We kind of just immediately jumped into action and knew exactly what to do.
The thing that they did the most was console people. It was very traumatic for the whole community. So to be there to give assistance really helped us feel like we were making a difference with some people.
We've been prepared so well that whenever we're put into these situations, we don't think about, can I do this? We do it because we've had the training and we know that we can.
We teach people confidence. the confidence that should a situation arise, that you have the capabilities to react to that situation. So one of the scenarios that we have is what to do in the event of either being in a submerged vehicle or coming upon one.
The right leg.
All right, go ahead and get her out and take her over there on the side of the road. Good job. Great job.
It's okay, we'll carry you. What's your
Can you
name,
tell us your
Anthony?
name?
My name is Dolores Bertolini.
Yes, and your
CERT for me meant survival and how to survive in the wilderness, because at that time I thought this was wilderness. We were big city kids from New York City, so we never even thought about hurricanes. It's just beautiful here all the time. But when a storm comes, everything changes.
Our CERT members played a huge role in Hurricane Matthew. We were a part of opening a shelter here in our region, and our CERT members were the ones that came to the rescue once again and manned that shelter. They made sure that everybody had what they needed. We could not react as an emergency management division without them. They are that integral of a role.
Everybody can be a CERT member. Everybody brings a skill. That's the type of city we have.
So the next earthquake, we know it's going to happen within 30 years. We know we're going to get a big one. We have no idea when it's going to occur, but we have to be ready.
We've had a lot of people that felt like they needed to do something after the earthquake. Today, the CERT program is stronger than ever.
We care about our community, so we sign up and show up. This is my first citywide drill where I get to apply the skills I've learned.
We assess the building from outside to see what we notice.
You are always assessing your situation to make sure that you react quickly and proactively. I've also learned many different skills, like being able to assess structural damage in a building, look for gas leaks, and do a little bit of triage.
Our job here is to train our CERT volunteers to be on their own for at least 3 or 4 days. We're so used to calling on resources that are readily available to us, and during the time of an earthquake, those resources just aren't going to come. So you really have to rely on your neighbors and the people that are around you.
I am not afraid anymore. If another earthquake happens or another disaster, I have some skills that I've learned, and so the fear and the terror is not there.
It's really empowering to know that you're what's going to be there first. You're what's going to comfort the people.
Because of the CERT training, we didn't lose hope. We actually became proponents of you can survive no matter what.
I think what I like best about the program is just feeling like I am part of San Francisco, and in case of an emergency, I feel prepared.
Customized for where it's at in the country, and that's no different here. We talked a lot about at our recent CERT training earthquakes and how we might be impacted here, how transportation might be impacted, how buildings might be impacted. And it really goes to this group of people. We would like to see a big, huge group of people in Eastvale that are trained so that in those first few days after a disaster like that, those CERT people can do the most good for the most number of people. Just some more pictures from the training. The emergency management came out from Riverside County, and they were very helpful in helping us do the training. They have the equipment. Ava behind me here and Don Pettinger also taught in the CERT class. We're all certified trainers. Ava's the brains and brawn behind the whole setting up CERT and the emergency management program in general. And she set up this class as well. We learned how to assess somebody when they've been injured, to kind of make an initial assessment about how injured they are and how quickly they need help, so that we can triage and help put those in most need out front. Some basic bandaging and direct pressure. This is cribbing, where you can actually lift up a heavy piece of concrete or something like that if somebody was under it, to try to help get them out. So they're taught how to do that. Oops, too far. And then at the final part, we do an exercise at the end of the day, probably the most fun, where they put all the skills they learned during the training to work to clear a building, which was City Hall right here. And you can see the picture going back one more. on the left, where we turned off all the lights, we had all the chairs and tables turned over, we had loud screaming people, on the sound system, and it was intimidating. But they learned a lot, and they really enjoyed it, and there's the certified new members. Somebody doesn't have a certificate up, though. I don't remember who that was. Ava, did you have anything to add?
I think Johnny went over most of it. What I think they didn't make very clear in the video, and I like to emphasize during CERT classes, is that during a disaster, there are people that are going to run out and help. They're going to run out of help because that's the kind of people they are. That is what their heart tells them to do. And the goal of CERT is to prepare those people to do that safely for themselves and for the people that they are helping. So that's one thing. And then in the previous slide over there, you can see that, Stephanie, thanks. You can see that the program has been in Eastville for a pretty long time, since 2014, as far as I can see the numbers. And we've trained through all those classes 221 people. And we partner with the county agencies, with the local UASI team. We got our backpacks from them, and now we're starting to partner with Neighborhood Watch. And I hope that those partnerships keep coming, and we expand the program, because it's a great program.
We have just under 70,000 more to train. Any questions?
No, it looks great. I appreciate the presentation, because I know we've been doing it, but haven't formally seen, everything that goes into it. So as far as equipment, do we have equipment on site?
The county has equipment, and we're looking into getting our own. We would like to have that, but there's also grants available, and the county is accessing some of those right now to buy some new trailers, and we may also be able to get one of those trailers stored here in Eastville, and then we would be able to use it whenever we wanted to.
How do people sign up for this training?
We do all the signups through Eventbrite, but the way that you do it is you go to the main Eastville website and /CERT. And on that page is, so eastvilleca.gov /CERT. And on that page, you can find information about the next trainings. Right now, the next training is not set up. We actually need to determine a date for the next one, but I think we're going to do one before May. And so as soon as we figure that out, we're going to advertise. There's going to be flyers in City Hall. We send it out through Eastville Weekly and through social media as well.
Who maintains the roster for how many people are currently trained, and do we update it? So if kids move away to college or train high school, do we know if that's our current number, if it's actually a little lower? And then one thing I'm not clear on is when they get activated, they just show up on their own, or do you put like an all-call?
So Eastville currently does not have a train and retain program. We train and release. So we don't have a roster of active CERT members. So no, we don't keep that. However, we do have a way to contact them, and if Eastville creates a CERT train and retain program, then we will be able to email those people and ask them if they would like to join.
And we are investigating a train and retain to see if we can make that happen.
Still, even if they're out there at large, then they're still going to be carrying their training with them wherever they go. So it's still a great program. So thank you. And do you ever solicit maybe at events, like public events that we've had? I know we've had a public safety event here a few months back. Obviously, we had opportunities there, but have we ever done anything in terms of other physical community outreach other than email blasts?
We have taken flyers to events that occur at a time around when the training's happening. So yeah, we've taken the flyers, and our PIO team usually knows when the events are happening, and they advertise it as well, physically during the events as well.
Thank you.
Do we ever involve them in drills? If the Great American Shakeout or anything else we do joint with fire or RSO? Oh, as far as drills, if we do like a joint drill with like RSO or fire, do we ever involve anybody that's, from
I know county emergency management does them, and they have some planned. I think they have what do they call it?
There's a CERT drill coming up.
Yeah.
It's a CERT field day that the county is planning in March. I think that's March 25th. And but as far as the shakeout, no, not in my memory. I don't think we've done one with RSO and fire, but that's an interesting idea to look into.
And one more question. In that video, I liked what they did with high school kids. Do we do that at Roosevelt?
We do want to look into the interest of the teen CERT program and do that as well here. And I think that's something we'll be working on.
That is extra training that we would have to do, but right now, teens, anyone older than 14 can attend the classes that we host. They just have to have a parent present the whole time.
Even if we didn't have a program just for them, if they attended, maybe they can get some extra credit or
They
something.
actually can get community service hours, and there was a bill passed recently that ensures that they can get community service hours for participation in CERT.
Does RSO or fire offer to our explorers?
With fire, they're part of it. So, for instance, like Menifee, they incorporate the Explorer program into the CERT program. As far as the shakeout, we do our internal training for that day. So we have to catastrophically show up at every large facility. So here it would be like Ranger, Amazon, and physically get out, check it out. And it's part of our training that gets inputted for our ISO rating, which goes into the insurance.
Nice, thank you. I appreciate that. We had a lot of questions. A lot of questions came up once we started talking about it, so thank you. Right. So let's see, we're on to 4.2, the monthly community enhancement and safety update. It's going to be by our community enhancement and safety manager, Fair.
Thank you. She's getting Stephanie's getting another PowerPoint out. So the city's invested heavily in community enhancement and safety this year, including the hiring of a manager. And one of the first things we noticed right away was that we didn't have a tracking software to help us manage the high load of cases that we get. So we did get that installed back in October. We started to use it. And so we have a new report for you. In the past, you've got a very little bit of information about what we're doing. This is going to give you more. So you can see from here, we're going to be able to tell you all the different case types, the different numbers of cases. This is from, this is incorrect. I apologize. I gave you the wrong PowerPoint. But this is an example of what you'll be getting in the future. And this actual report is from 12/2 to 129. So those are the numbers that we had for that period for case types. So you can see there we had 76 trash can cases. It's 44 cases for property maintenance, which might be things like the grass is dead or bushes are dead, things like that. This here shows the officer action count. So every time they go out and do an inspection, a follow-up inspection, case notes are things like when they talk to the building department and they get information about a case, they'll input it in there. Communications with the public, send and receive email, all of that is documented now in the software, and we're able to track it and use that information for long-term planning, for decision-making as our department, grows with the city and the housing stock in the city ages. We'll be able to look back at properties and see if past cases and whatnot. This shows you where the cases come from, and you can see here that we've started doing our proactive sweeps. The reason I said the PowerPoint was wrong is I was making the one for this meeting. We had one for last meeting, and I had a little software glitch, and they're fixing it. So your next meeting, I'll get you all caught up. And the report will come in just like your other reports. It'll be on paper, and you'll be able to review this and then, of course, ask questions as they come up. But you can see where the complaints come from. Proactive sweep right now is the highest. We're very active on that, and then neighbor complaints are second, anonymous complaints, and then proactive inspections. What that means is, as the officers are driving around their neighborhoods, when they see something specific, particularly bad, they'll stop and start and begin a case on it rather than waiting for someone to complain. which in the past we didn't do that. This is just a picture on December 2nd of all the open cases in the city. You can see that there's quite a few. And so this will be part of your report as well. These are a point in time of all the inspections that are due. So on December 2nd, when the officers showed up for work, these are all the inspections that they need to perform that day. And then this is our proactive work. This is back in December. So the whole north side of the city is already done from Limonite North. And now we're working our way down through the lower, south of Limonite. Any questions on that?
Yeah, the anonymous tips.
Yes.
What's the method for that?
If someone reports it on the eCitizen app, they don't have to provide their information. So that gets logged as anonymous. So if someone calls us on the phone, they can say, I don't want to give you that information. And so they just call their city phone number. We don't put their information in, so that would be logged as anonymous. And even email. Sometimes people will tell us, we know who they are, but they're telling us, I don't want my name associated with it, so we don't put it in the file.
And then our lone graffiti case, if a business gets tagged, it's on the owner, right, to clean it up? And then if they don't clean it up, they get cited? Do we help them out with that?
Yeah, JCSD has a graffiti abatement program, and that's why you won't see a lot of graffiti cases on our system, because we refer it to them. Depends on it's private property or public property, how it gets handled. But to your question on private property, we will notify them they need to clean it up. If they don't, potentially they could receive a fine, but most business owners take care of it right away because they don't want it there either.
This is not really a problem here, but do we database graffiti and store it for the sheriff's department future reference?
We don't in our department. I'm not sure about JCSD. They may.
Maybe if RSO know? If they provide you guys graffiti data?
Yeah, we don't have a graffiti tracker for Eastville.
Copy, sir.
But I know our parks officer was getting some of those referrals when it was significant, so it's not like they were in the dark.
Yeah, Brian Parham gets all the graffiti, anything related to the parks or even any of the JCSD properties, the intersections, the landscaping areas and all that. So he keeps track of those.
And do we have a way to capture how much comes in from eCitizen to us?
Yeah, we can do reports on eCitizen to show all the different complaints that come in. Some of them get transferred into our internal software now, and some of them get referred out to other agencies or to Public Works or Building and Safety.
I'm not asking to create a new report or new work. I was just curious if, do we get them in one place? Do we have one, a request, here's all the e-citizens, or do they come in separately? Because obviously we have different methods of receiving these requests, phone, email. Is e-citizen a referral by email, or is it by another?
It's an app on a phone. So,
well, I know how they report it,
yeah,
but we don't receive it through the app.
Well, we have a page, an internal facing page that we receive those complaints
Oh,
on.
we do? So it's like an administrator function?
Yeah, all the code staff have access to that. And they can go in, if it's not for us, we can change it so that it's routed to the right people.
I see. I just expected there to be a web interface where we receive them, so it was different than I expected.
It is a web interface, but it's internal facing. You have to log in and then you can see all those complaints.
Okay, so you check them on the system directly?
Yeah, our staff goes in and checks every morning for new complaints. And then I've also set it up for our department, for our code cases, that it sends us an email as well. So that if it happens during the day, we don't wait until the next day to get it.
And then just pre-sorts the ones that are relevant to us?
To code enforcement, or to community enhancement, yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Oh, in December, I sent you an email, and you guys handled it the same day, so thank you for that.
Our goal is 24 to 48 hours, but as soon as possible.
I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Let's see, next up, item 4.3, the monthly fire department update. Chief Tovar.
Good evening. So this month, it's been getting a little busier. We're up to 298 calls in the city. Station 27, obviously hitting the majority of the calls at 156. We're compiling our information so that it starts showing how many units leave the city and how many come in, as it's reciprocal due to the integrated cooperative fire system. But as of right now, more units are starting to come in on the north side peninsula. So we're starting to see an increase in 27's calls from 117 to 156. So a total of 298 for 31 and Station 27. No significant reports as far as major calls, just a few traffic collisions, an increase in traffic collisions. The majority of the areas are going to be on the Archibald North and on the Hamner North area.
We didn't have a December meeting, but around November, you guys sent an email talking about the homeless encampment. They're setting fires out there. What was the, I was a little bit confused as far as what we're allowed to do about that, or what we are doing.
So we received notification. We have our own law enforcement bureau that deals specifically with arson cases and so on. So it doesn't tie up the PD portion. This year, the governor has increased that number from like 32 to 117 officers. So statewide, we're going to receive more officers. So by saying that, now we're going to enforce more of the illegal campfires, because those campfires are deemed illegal because they're not the property owners. But just trying to get the multiple organizations to comply with us and enforce that, because that whole river bottom is part of the river and flood control, as opposed to like the Orange County water control basin that collects here just south of Eastvale. So we do enforce it. All our officers that do report any fire, it goes straight to the bureau and they investigate it further if there needs to be contact with those homeless encampments. We did have one in the Riverwalk area, but it happened to be right on the border of Norco and Eastvale. But like I was explaining to Ava, a lot of our contacts are minimal here just because of the amount of mosquitoes you have on that bottom end, and because the river tends to get wider as it collects into the Prado Basin, as opposed to the north side Rivido-Harupa area.
So if someone does, I guess, smell a fire down there, I guess they're gonna call 911 probably, and then we're not gonna send a whole truck out there just to look at the campfire, are we? What's the actual process?
Our process right now is if you see any fire, and we do advise all residents, any fire in the river bottom has to have a contact. We make contact with the person lighting the fire, but yes, there is one truck assigned to it. In the summer, we do increase that to 7, depending on the area, because once we have an established river bottom fire, it's like the 46 fire in Harupa, very catastrophic. And the city property, if you look at it on the boundary line on the map, it actually goes into the middle of the river bottom all the way to the top. So we do make contacts, we do educate them, we give them pamphlets. There's other means of cooking, and they understand that for the most part, but most of the fires are just due to negligence. You know, people just walking through and lighting them.
So follow up to that question, besides educating them, are we giving them a written warning that we document, or is there a citation to follow on the third try?
Our officers do cite them. There is a citation process. Every LA-66 is what we call it, is a CalFIRS form that is done electronically and gets sent directly to the assigned officer. So that assigned officer will compile those cases and make contacts throughout a shift.
Good to know, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have the monthly police department update, which is item 4.4 by Sergeant Gutierrez.
Good evening, chairs and commissioners. For December 2019, we had 2,160 calls for service, which was a 6% increase from November. For our total traffic collisions, we had 88 total, which was a 7% decrease from the previous month. The previous month, we had 95. Out of those traffic collisions, we had 24 that involved injuries, which was a 9% increase, or two more than we had the previous month. Out of non-injury traffic collisions, we had 64, which was a 12% decrease from the previous month of 73. December, we had 341 total citations, which was a 19% decrease. We had 422 the previous month. Out of those citations, we had 152 moving citations. The previous month, we had 269. Parking violations, we had 189 total parking violations, which is a 23% increase from the previous month. Vehicle burglaries, we had we increased by 1. We had 26 total. We had 25 the previous month. Out of the calls for noise calls, we had 60, which was 1 less than the previous month. We had 61. Mail theft in December, we had 12, which was a increase of 7 from the previous month. We had 5. For the UCR numbers of November, we had 0 reported homicides. We had 1 reported rape, 2 robberies, 4 aggravated assaults, 16 burglaries, 65 larceny or theft. We had 12 vehicle thefts and 0 reported arsons. We had 6 calls related to street racing in the month of November. Actually, the month of December. Sorry about that. I'm here for any questions if you have any.
You know, every meeting, we usually have the crime stats that you report on, but we never actually have the hard copy. We have the previous month in the hard copy. Like, you're reporting on December, and I have, like, the most recent I have November. Am I wrong? Am I missing it?
The UCR stats?
Or all the crime stats? Were you reporting on December or November?
What is provided is, because it's all one page, is that the UCR stats are always at least a month behind. So when you're getting the November, that's the UCR stats for November, and then the corresponding other stats. What Brian gives you, or what Sergeant Gutierrez gives you, is more up to date, because we do have those other numbers for December. So we can go back and just give you November's, but we thought you'd rather be a month ahead.
No,
And those type of things. But the report that you're getting is the UCR stats, along with the traffic collisions, mail thefts, and all that stuff. It's basically, this is November stats, includes UCR and all the other calls.
But are December not completed yet?
No, because UCR stats you don't get till like a little over a month later.
So what other stats are we getting in December then?
You're getting the traffic collisions, you're getting the calls for service, you're getting the number of arrests, you're getting the mail thefts, the street racing, anything non-UCR, which is UCR, all part one crimes.
Right, okay, I understand now. Because I keep, like, then searching, and I'm like, I should just stop searching for them
Yeah,
if they're
you're
not
always
in
gonna
here.
be at least a month behind.
Yeah. Okay.
Was it possible to just see what you guys have, like the non-UCR ones? Because it's kind of hard to follow when you're talking, because, you know, you're looking at these numbers and they're not the numbers that you're seeing. Would that be possible?
Yeah, the UCR stats that he provides should be the same as what you have. Yeah, but the other ones are gonna be different, so. He does have the December ones, that's what he just read off to you, Oh, you wanna get a copy of those? We could do that.
Yeah, it's more just a visual aid,
We
that's all
can,
it is.
yeah, you know what, we do a monthly report, which is the comparison between November and December. We can send you guys a copy, we can give it to the city, and they can, send it out to you.
I'll have January's numbers done next week. You can get them early before the next meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It does help when we're following around and skipping back.
Yeah, then you'll have a 2-month comparison, and as he's reading it, you can follow along.
Even if it's not all UCRs, even if we're just talking
Yeah.
about the other stats.
Yeah,
it just
we'll always be a
helps.
month behind in the part 1 crime stuff.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, I appreciate that.
No problem.
No other questions for the sergeant? No. Thank you very much. We're on to section 5, additions and revisions. Has we had any staff member requesting to add an item?
No, sir, we have not.
Would any commissioners like to add an item?
I would.
No.
So I've gotten some complaints regarding the traffic near Claire Barton Elementary School. There's a 3-way stop on Corona Valley and Eastville Parkway where there's no crossing guard or anybody out there, I guess, watching that area. And I guess there's a lot of people that run that stop sign, and people have gotten, I guess, almost hit there. So I had some residents bring that up to me to see if maybe possible we can do something out there.
I think we can take that as a commissioner comments item. You're not asking to add it to the agenda, are you, at this time?
Yeah, I think maybe we got that in a section coming forward. This is additions or revisions to the previous information.
Oh, yeah, no. I don't have any revisions. Sorry.
That's all right. It's coming. It won't be long. We're still,
Well,
it's still
antsy.
short. It hasn't gotten
Okay.
any longer. It doesn't look like we have any other changes or additions for this section. So I think we can move right along to the consent calendar, 4.1 through 6. All matters of the consent calendar are considered routine or to be approved with one motion unless the commissioner, staff member, or member of the public requests separate action on a specific item. Do we have any requests to pull an item?
No, sir, we have not received any.
Do we have any staff members requesting to pull one of the items on the consent?
No, sir.
Can we get a motion to accept the items on the consent calendar?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Cirillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fitch?
Aye.
Commissioner Varela?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gracia?
Aye.
Chair Dinko?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
So under commission business items, we have some training, a presentation on the Brown Act.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Erica Vega, the City Attorney, for those of you who I haven't met before. I was asked to come this evening to provide a refresher training on the Brown Act, which is just a good practice to do. I do periodically with most legislative bodies that I work with, especially when we have a new commissioner joining. And I like to keep this focused on things that are actually pertinent to your activities as commissioners. It's not a comprehensive overview of the Brown Act, so a lot of it is more staff handled, like preparation of the agenda, posting of the agenda. So what I like to focus on are meetings and the agenda and the conduct of the meetings when it comes to commission trainings and other legislative body training. So hopefully you've guessed from that it shouldn't be too long. It's not a comprehensive training. And I'm happy to answer questions as they arise. If you have really specific questions about maybe things that have happened in the past or whatnot, I'm happy to stick around afterwards and answer those kinds of questions. But for the purposes of the training, more just sort of general questions, I'm happy to field as we go along. So just as a brief reminder, the general intent of the Brown Act is to ensure that the public's business is conducted in the open. So that is codified in the opening statement of the Brown Act. And the basic rule that you all need to follow and every member of a legislative body needs to follow is that your meetings need to be open and public, and anyone must be permitted to attend them. That is sort of the golden rule of the Brown Act, the one takeaway you should remember. Also note that even though the Brown Act has been around for quite some time, in 2004, there was an initiative, Proposition 59, that actually constitutionalized the public's right to access and transparency in their government. So now, even though the meat of the Brown Act is not in the Constitution, the people's right to access that information is a constitutional right that they have. So I just sort of emphasize the importance of compliance with the Brown Act and other open government laws as well. That also applies to like the Public Records Act and things of that nature. So kind of getting into the meat of the Brown Act and what you need to be cognizant of, excuse me, is that you sit on a legislative body and legislative bodies are subject to compliance with the Brown Act. So that includes city council, all commissions, or any committees that are created by a formal act. There is a limited exception for what we call ad hoc subcommittees. However, that exception really only applies when the committee is established for a limited duration, has a limited scope, and it has to consist solely of members of the same body. So you can't have a mix of, say, city council and public safety commission on an ad hoc committee. It just has to be just two of you, just two of the council, or just two planning commissioners. So what is a meeting? The general definition of a meeting is any gathering of a majority of the members of a legislative body at the same time and location to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item that's in your subject matter jurisdiction. So exactly what's happening here right now is a meeting. However, you know, on its face, that may sound like you all have to physically be together, and at some of the subsequent slides, you'll see that that is not actually the case. So there's a specific provision in the Brown Act that prohibits informal meetings. So you cannot meet outside of a properly noticed Public Safety Commission meeting. You cannot use any series of communications of any kind, whether it's direct or indirect, or uses intermediaries or not, to discuss, deliberate, or take action on anything within your subject matter jurisdiction. So the content of the communication is really what's key. There's this is a direct quote from the Brown Act, which is sort of a safe harbor provision, if you will, that allows you to have separate communications and conversations outside of a noticed meeting if you're answering questions or providing information, so long as you don't communicate to other members of this body your positions or the positions of any other members. So it's sort of a one-on-one communications are totally permissible, but then you just can't take that information that you've had in a one-on-one communication and then relay it to another member of the body, because then you've got 3 people involved, which is a quorum, and a meeting has occurred. Also note that this safe harbor is answer questions or provide information. The County of San Bernardino Board of Supervisors is actually sort of embroiled in the current moment over an alleged Brown Act violation. And this issue of answering questions and providing information is sort of the key of question that needs to be answered. In that particular case, they had a vacancy on the board and they voted to appoint somebody, and the court has said that the vote to appoint that person to fill the vacancy violated the Brown Act, because they reviewed the applications outside of a meeting and then let the clerk of the board know the ones that they were interested in interviewing, to whittle the pool from 40-something applicants down to about 10. And people allege that process, because it did not occur at a meeting, actually violated the Brown Act. And so far, trial court has agreed with that. So just kind of keep that in mind, though it's a very specific fact pattern. It's something that does come up in, you know, in our general area. People are paying attention, and it's just something to always keep in mind. So a couple of examples of impermissible informal meetings. One is we refer to it as a daisy chain. It's just kind of very simple. One member contacts another, who then contacts a third, and so on and so on. With the key here being that actual information pertaining to your subject matter jurisdiction or an item of business is being relayed. Obviously, if you're, you know, reminding each other it's so-and-so's birthday, I'm going to bring cookies, that's not a Brown Act violation. But if it's about something that's actually within the purview of this commission, then it would be. Another common example that we see is the hub and spoke, where there is an intermediary who individually contacts members of the legislative body, and then in doing so is also relaying information about what he or she is hearing from the other members of the legislative body to develop some sort of collective concurrence or action. In that San Bernardino County case I just mentioned, this is what was used. In that case, the clerk of the board was sort of acting as the hub, and each of the board members was contacting the clerk with their information about who they liked from all the different applicants. Then the clerk used that to formulate a short list, essentially, of people who would actually come in and be interviewed during a noticed meeting of the Board of Supervisors. So technology is a blessing and a curse. And this is something that happens all the time, and I have to talk with people frequently about, is reminding people that you don't have to physically be in the same location. Communication via email, text message, or social media is potentially can violate the Brown Act as well. So in sort of general, broad terms, and again, with the caveat that it's about something pertaining to your actual jurisdiction, if all of you are involved in a communication, whether by email or text, it is definitely going to be a violation of the Brown Act if you're discussing or deliberating or somehow taking action on the item. Social media is a little bit of a grayer area. There's not case law yet that is binding, that really goes into detail as to when social media postings and comments and things like that cross the line. So I always like to advise, you know, a more careful stance in making sure that if you're going to be posting on social media, that you're cognizant of the audience and who could potentially be viewing it, and if it's a quorum of all of you, that you really think carefully about posting and making sure that you're not creating a situation where someone could potentially argue that there's a Brown Act violation that has occurred. So just some recommendations again. Avoid sending emails or texts or social media, you know, Facebook messaging, whatever it may be, to the entirety of the body. But if it's necessary, do so to provide information only and make sure you're not soliciting a response. When I send emails, for example, to like the entire city council, I'll always include it like a reminder, please do not reply to all, because it happens, accidents happen all the time. I've done it myself, especially when I'm on my phone. It's so much easier to reply all on your phone than it is when you're actually on your computer. And so similarly, if you're going to be emailing the entire group or texting the entire group, being careful as to what you're communicating, because you never know what someone else might do with that. They may unintentionally pass it on to someone else or reply all. So just really be cognizant. I always like to pause and just take a second to make sure that I've protected myself, protected the body before I shoot off an email to an entire legislative body that I work with. So that being said, there are several exceptions written into the Brown Act for what are considered to be non-meetings. So I'm going to run through these really quick. And pretty much all of them have the exclusionary language that if you discuss something that's a specific business item before you, the exception doesn't apply. So for example, on this one, individual contacts and conversations between two of you is fine. It's not a quorum. You can discuss commission business to your heart content because it's just two of you. It's not a quorum. However, you should always make sure that if you're having a conversation with someone, that they're not acting as an intermediary in that hub and spoke example. So you may want to remind the person that you're speaking with that they shouldn't share your thoughts about something with another person, especially not with another public safety commissioner. So a few more examples. If a majority of you were to attend a conference that's open to the public that pertains to, you know, public safety matters, that's not a Brown Act violation. But again, as long as you don't all then, you know, get together for dinner and start discussing very specific items of business within the jurisdiction of the commission. Open and publicized meetings to address topics of community concern by an organization other than the city of Eastvale. So I think you have town hall meetings here, though I heard that those might be wrapping up. I'm not sure. That would be an example of a open meeting organized by entity or organization or person other than the city. Neighborhood watch meetings would probably fall into this category as well as any meetings of like JCSD, JARPD, or other public agencies that aren't the city of Eastvale. You can also attend open and public meetings of another body of the local agency. So here, that's the city council and the planning commission. you can attend those meetings, and you don't have to worry about a Brown Act violation occurring. And then also social and ceremonial occasions. So I think the recent year-end gathering and award ceremony would be a good example of that, where it's primarily a social and ceremonial occasion. Again, as long as you're not all huddled together at a table talking about the, matters that are within the commission's jurisdiction. And then finally, attendance at a standing committee of this body, but I don't think you have any standing committees, so we won't really discuss that one any further. So switching gears just a little bit, going from sort of what is a meeting, what you need to be careful of to make sure you're not unintentionally having a meeting that's not agendized and open to the public. The second sort of major thing that I like to cover in trainings to legislative bodies is what you can discuss when you're at an agendized meeting. So the rule is that you stick to the agenda. Staff prepares your agenda, tells you the items that are going to be discussed, and that's what you are able to discuss. However, there is some leeway to briefly discuss things that are not included on the agenda. And before I get into what they are, I will say that there is no bright line rule as to what constitutes brief. And so it is contextual. I can't say, you know, once you reach the 5-minute mark, you've gone too long, or not even close to the mark. There's no rules out there to follow. So you just kind of have to rely on the situation, and shorter is always going to be more defensible, I guess is probably the best way to put it. But I sort of generally suggest that if someone does bring up one of these things briefly, the best way to avoid a Brown Act violation is to not engage them further on it. Let them make their brief statement or question or whatever, but don't then say, oh, well, that got me thinking, and now, you go on, and then there becomes a dialogue back and forth about a subject that's not on your agenda. So what can you talk about briefly? You can respond to questions and statements from the public. You can ask questions for clarification. You can make announcements and report on activities that you've had outside of your commission meetings. You can request that staff report back on an item or ask that something be placed on a future agenda. And then you can also just provide reference and other factual information to staff. So you can see a lot of these are more one-way communications versus communications that are intended to open up a dialogue amongst the commission about the subject matter. And then the process for adding items to an agenda, which you have clearly printed in your agenda packet. And so I really appreciate that, because this rule is it's not invoked very often, and so it's easily forgotten. You can add things to an agenda from the dais. However, it's very limited. It has to relate to an emergency situation. 2/3 of you have to vote to place the item on the agenda because there is some sort of need to take immediate action. And that need has to have arisen after the agenda was posted. There's actually a few cases about this where essentially, staff wasn't aware a deadline was coming up, and so something didn't get put in the agenda, and then tried to add it after the fact, and the courts have said that wasn't sufficient. And then there is also an exclusion that allows you to add things that were on an agenda that was 5 days earlier, which almost never gets invoked, never happens, because you don't hold meetings that frequently. So also on the agenda, there always has to be the ability to make general public comment and then specific public comment about items of business that are on your agenda. The blue speaker slips in the back are actually not legally required, and you can't legally require people to fill out a blue speaker slip. They have First Amendment rights to anonymous speech. It is just preferred because it helps the city track people who have expressed interest in the subject and be able to keep in touch with them and keep them apprised of what's going on. So if someone ever says, I don't want to fill that out, you just let it go. Finally, here you take roll call vote, so that makes me happy as well, because the Brown Act was amended a few years ago to require the vote of the body and how each member of the legislative body voted to be orally announced. This was done as a result of legislative bodies, particularly ones that have a lot of members on them, voting by just everyone who's in favor say aye, all those opposed say nay, and people in the audience and people listening or watching a video at home couldn't tell how people actually voted. So that's the problem that this change was trying to address, and roll call voting solves it entirely. So I think it's the best practice, and I'm glad that you guys implement that here. And so that's just sort of more on the requirement. I won't go into detail on it. So finally, I always like to include a little bit on the at the end on legal challenges, because I think it's important for people to understand the real world implications of Brown Act violations, so you can kind of understand what we're talking about, what would happen if someone were to allege a Brown Act violation. So the district attorney can bring a civil action, and so can any interested person. An interested person is anyone, anybody, whether they're a resident of Eastvale or not, it doesn't matter. Can bring a civil action to stop or prevent violations or threaten violations of the Brown Act, determine the applicability of the Brown Act to past actions, or threaten future actions, and then also to seek to void past actions that were done in violation of the Brown Act. However, the Act does have some procedures built in that need to be followed before someone can run to court and file a civil lawsuit. There's the cure and correct option, which applies whenever the person seeking to have an action voided. They have to submit a demand to the city that the alleged Brown Act violation be cured. It has to be sent within 90 days of the alleged violation, 30 days if it was in open session, but not really in violation of the provision defining what a meeting is. Then you have 30 days to decide whether you're going to agree to that demand and cure the action. If you decide not to, then they can file a lawsuit. So it kind of puts you between a rock and a hard place where you have to decide whether you want to argue that there was no violation, or just say, fine, we'll accede to your demand. It can sometimes look like there's some egg on your face there, unfortunately, with this particular procedure, but it does help avoid a lot of litigation. The second procedure is a cease and desist commitment, which applies when someone's just alleging that there's a violation of a Brown Act that has happened and will continue to happen if you don't agree to cease and desist. The letter has to describe in detail what the violation is, and you have 30 days to issue a, quote, unconditional commitment to cease that activity going forward. And if you don't, then again, they can sue. Also, if you issue the unconditional commitment and then continue the activity, they can also sue. So invalidation of an action taken in violation of the Brown Act is limited to only a few types of violations, but one of which is actions that are taken in violation of the basic open meeting law. So you've taken action or discussed or deliberated something that in a situation other than an open public agendized meeting. Same thing with violation of notice and agenda requirements for meetings. And then finally, costs and attorney's fees, because they rack up. If there's a Brown Act violation that is the court finds to have happened, they are 100% entitled to recover all of their costs and attorney's fees. On the flip side, and this is true in a lot of situations, the law does not allow the public entity to recover costs and attorney's fees except for in very limited situations when the city or the other public agency wins a Brown Act case. It has to have been clearly frivolous and totally lacking in merit. And it is exceedingly rare for a court to say that of any petition or complaint filed with respect to Brown Act, Public Records Act, or any other open meeting laws. So it gets costly, is I guess the best way to sum up that particular slide. And so with that, I don't have anything further. I think that covers the sort of most salient points of the Brown Act. So you can kind of focus on those rather than getting mired down in trainings that cover lots of things that don't pertain to your roles. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does that cover us for the year for training, or to watch that video still?
I'm sorry, that was not ethics training, but ethics training's every 2 years, not every year. So if you already did it, you have 2 years before you're next up.
Thank you very much for the presentation. A lot of good information on that. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Do we have any other questions for Erica? No? Well, we're on to our public comment section. I don't think we have any requests tonight.
No, sir, we haven't received any.
Well, for city staff, we report, I see Brian's not here tonight and not going to make it. Did he have anything he wanted to present?
I wanted to report back, Commissioner Fitch had requested a while back that we look into the citation process for unlicensed dogs in the city and how the county was doing that. We met with the county and we talked about that at great length. They went and did some research to determine how many citations they issue and what kind of fees they collect. The whole idea with the potential being that some of that maybe could be recoverable by the city. As it turns out, the county uses that as a tool to gain compliance. And so when they issue a citation for not having a dog license or at large or whatever, when the person comes in and complies and gets the dog license, that citation gets dismissed. So there's no fees collected. And I'll get to some statistics in a minute. And then some of those, they never come in, maybe they move away or whatever. Those go to collections, but they often also don't get collected. So at the end of the report, for 2019, there was 159 citations issued. 102 were dismissed when the owner came in and obtained the required licensing. The remaining went to collections, but for 2019, there were none that were collected upon. They never got any money on any of those remaining ones. So there's a potential of maybe $4,000 to $10,000 per year, assuming all the citations were paid. But based on what they're telling us, nearly none of them are, and they're getting good compliance. So at this time, we don't feel like there's any kind of return on it to try to look into that further.
Thank you. All right, exactly what I was looking for.
I appreciate that. I didn't know that was the process that they followed. That's interesting. Yeah.
I didn't either, so
Yeah.
it was good.
Do we have anything else in that category?
No, sir, we don't.
So we have, move on to commission communications. I know you had something you wanted to ask. I know Brian's not here, but if we can still put it on record, we can follow up on that with city staff.
Yes, this is just in regards to the traffic near Clara Barton Elementary School. So it would be, there's a three-way stop. It's the corner of Corona Valley Avenue and Eastville Parkway. So on, they're constantly like running that stop sign, and that's where a lot of the kids are crossing the street.
So are you asking
Just during,
our
I mean,
city staff
maybe-
to put on some, look at additional crosswalks? Is that what the staff?
There's a crosswalk there, but the drivers aren't stopping for the kids that are crossing the street.
So maybe we're asking for additional enforcement?
Yes.
I see.
Yes, additional enforcement, cross guard. I know that's not through the city, that would be through the schools, but, you know, maybe some kind of solution.
Sergeant Gutierrez, can you take that?
Yeah, we have rotating, we try to send our enforcement to each and every school. There's more schools in our enforcement. Right now, we've been focusing on the Roosevelt because they changed the light when the cars going across the street into Roosevelt. But I'll add that to our motor to go check out that intersection or that crosswalk. I know don't they have two crosswalks for that school right there?
They do, but the crosswalk that they have is further down in front
yeah.
of the school. But this is the one where it hits all three
Mhm.
streets. So it's the three-way cross.
Yeah, I think the
crosswalk.
school, that would be the city would have to go see the traffic and everything like that for them
Yeah.
to determine if there's another crossing guard there, but I'll have our motorists in that area also.
Okay, thank you.
We have how many motors again? You said it before, but I forgot.
We have 2 motors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anything else?
Yeah, I do. I've gotten several complaints from the community. I'm sure it was actually addressed at the last city council meeting, but regarding the Serafina apartment complex, I'm sure you guys are aware of that. So I've gotten numerous complaints. My phone blows up because of this, because I, live near the area. Can I get staff to get back to us on the next Public Safety Commission as to what they plan on doing, if anything, regarding the possibility of implementing no overnight parking? There's been several issues. Actually, last night there was another break-in apparently, so the residents aren't very happy. So, and unfortunately, I hear about it as well. So if we can get an update from Brian and staff as to what they plan on doing with the no overnight parking, or what action they're going to take as a city. Thank you.
We presented a series of topics we want to hear about a few meetings ago. Johnny did a great job today with the first one regarding CERT. What do we have planned for the next meeting? I just want to make sure we're still going through with those presentations.
Are there some outstanding things you're thinking of specifically?
We made a list, a few, back in, October, November, of stuff we wanted to hear about. So some from the city, some from fire and RSO. I'm not sure if we thought that far ahead yet. I just want to make sure we keep it going. And I enjoyed hearing tonight about CERT, and I want to make sure we get the rest of the stuff we wanted to cover knocked out.
I don't remember what else is on there. Do you remember?
ALPR, emergency notification system, how we're notifying citizens in the event of a emergency like a gas leak or some kind of disaster. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Reverse the emergency notification, and ALPR update. We wanted that, and from fire, I wanted to hear about hazmat capabilities in the city. And then, and since Eva's here, I actually would like to hear more about your role in the future as far as what you have plans for us as far as drills and the ICS capabilities for city staff, in the future. As far as who do we have as ICS trained, we have all the roles filled for to fill up a EOC, in the event of some kind of disaster. But that's just something I'd like to hear about. It doesn't have to be now. I know you're kind of still stepping into your role.
We can take a look at the schedule and see what we have coming up for future meetings, and then I can send you guys some information.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe if you could relate that to Brian, and he can, decide which item maybe we could look at, that would be great. Do we have any other items on that? Oh, you found. Was there anything that wasn't mentioned a moment ago? Anything from the previous minutes that we didn't just read through? Crime map. Oh, okay, about maybe I think maybe it was about crime maps for our city and what we had going on.
Yes, I know we brought up specifically vehicle burgs and vehicle thefts broken down by in a map. So I guess we can just refer back to the October minutes, just to make sure we just cover one of those per meeting next few months. That'd be great.
And Stephanie, you got that? You'll discuss that with Brian?
Yes, sir, I do have that information.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have anything else from the commissioners? I think
You know what? I was just gonna ask Sergeant Gutierrez, how is that traffic going over there on Roosevelt with the lights?
It's obviously it's backing up. It's a busy area, especially in the morning. You got 4,000 kids in that one school. It's they're not impacting the community across the street. Like I guess that was the main complaint of Colin, but they're obviously traffic. It takes 20 minutes. 20 minutes, the traffic goes away. You know, just like any school in the city. But as of right now, most people are complying. There is a lack of drop-off area though for kids. It's citrus or nothing else. So, but we're working with it, and everybody it's doing as safe as possible as they can.
Thank you. Do we have anything else from the commissioners? Well, I think that's it. The next meeting for the Public Safety Commission is scheduled for Tuesday, February 25th at 6 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.